Welcome to DevFlix. In this video, I'll show you how to set up macOS 10.10.4 for full stack web development. We'll install iTerm 2, Sublime Text, Homebrew, rbenv, Ruby build, configure Git and Xcode command line tools, install Rails and Node.js. Let's get started. First, go to your web browser and navigate to iterm2.com. Next, scroll down and click the download button. Once iTerm 2 is finished downloading, open your downloads folder. Select the iTerm 2 app and drag it into the applications folder. Next, in the applications folder, double-click the iTerm 2 app to launch the application. Click Open. Now that we have iTerm 2 installed, let's install Homebrew, the package manager for macOS. Let's go back to our browser and navigate to brew.sh. Press enter. Next, we're going to copy the Ruby command to install Homebrew. Go back to iTerm 2, paste the command in, and press enter. Next, you'll be prompted to install the Xcode command line developer tools if you don't already have them installed. If you intend on doing any iOS or macOS development, I'd recommend installing the full Xcode. Otherwise, click Install to install the command line developer tools only. Accept the agreement, and now the command line developer tools will download and install. Once the Xcode command line developer tools have finished installing, click Done, and you'll be returned to the terminal and press enter. Next, enter your password. And press enter. Now Homebrew will download and install. Now let's type brew help, and we can get a list of commands available to us. And to make sure our system is ready to brew, we'll type brew doctor, press enter. And if you get the message your system is ready to brew, Homebrew has been successfully installed and we're ready to move on to the next step. So let's clear out our terminal. And now, before we get started installing, we're going to go ahead and grab our editor. For this, go back to your web browser and search for Sublime Text 3 and press enter. Click on the first link. Now click on the link to download Sublime Text 3 for OSX. Once the download is finished, navigate to your download folder, and we'll double click the Sublime Text DMG. And finally drag Sublime Text app into the applications folder. Now we can double click Sublime Text in the applications folder to launch Sublime. Click open. Now we have our editor installed. Now we can get started installing Ruby. Let's go back to our terminal. And clear it out. Now the first thing we're going to want to do is install rbenv and Ruby build. rbenv allows us to install and work with multiple different versions of Ruby on the same machine without conflicting with one another. To do this, type brew install rbenv space ruby dash build and press enter. Next, we'll want to add rbenv to our bash profile. If we scroll back up, you'll see that there's a command right here which allows us to do that. So we'll paste this in. And press enter. Next, we'll reload our bash profile. Clear out the terminal, and now if we type rbenv space -v, we should get a version number back. This lets you know that rbenv has been successfully installed. Next, let's install Ruby. To do this, type rbenv install 2.2.2. This will install Ruby version 2.2.2. Press enter. Now that Ruby is successfully installed, we're going to go ahead and set the global Ruby version using rbenv. To do this, type rbenv global 2.2.2 and press enter. Next, type ruby space -v, press enter, and you should get Ruby 2.2.2 with patch 95. Now we have successfully installed Ruby. Next thing we're going to do is configure Git. Clear the terminal and type git space config space -- global space color.ui space true and press enter. What this will do is enable coloring for the terminal for Git. Next, press the up arrow on your keyboard to visit the last command in the terminal and delete the color.ui and true, and we'll set the next property, which is going to be user.name space and then put your name in. Next, up on the keyboard again, and we'll do the same thing. And this time we'll set the property for user.email. And again, replace this with your email. And finally, we're going to generate an SSH key. To do this, type SSH-keygen -t space RSA space -c and then enter your email address. And press enter. You'll be asked where you would like to save the SSH key. By default, it'll be stored in a .ssh directory under your home directory, which is fine. Press enter. Next, you'll be asked if you want to create a passphrase. You can do this if you'd like to. Otherwise, just press enter. Again, press enter. And now our new SSH key has been generated. Now, what we'll want to do is add this SSH key to our GitHub account. So to do that, we need to copy it to the clipboard. So we'll type cat space tilde / for our home directory .ssh and then /id_rsa.pub. What this will do is output our SSH key to the terminal, and we'll want to go ahead and copy this to the clipboard. And now we'll go back to our web browser and we'll navigate to GitHub. Now we'll sign in, click on your profile, go to Settings, SSH Keys. We'll click Add SSH Key, give it a name, and paste in the SSH key, and click Add Key. Next, we'll verify that our SSH key was successfully added to GitHub. To do this, go back to terminal and type SSH-t space git@github.com and press enter. Next, it will ask if you're sure you'd like to continue connecting. Type yes and press enter. And if you get a message back that says, "Hi, your username, you successfully authenticated, but GitHub does not provide shell access," your SSH key has been successfully set up and added to GitHub. Now, let's install Rails. To do this, type gem install rails-v 4.2.1 and press enter. Now that Rails is finished installing, the next thing we'll need to do is tell rbenv about the Rails executable in order to use it. To do this, we'll go back to our terminal and we'll type rbenv rehash and press enter. Now, if we type Rails space -v and press enter, you should get Rails 4.2.1. If you did, you have Rails successfully installed on your machine. Next, let's set up a database. Clear out the terminal. And for the first database, we're going to install MySQL. So to do this, we'll use Homebrew. Type brew install To do this, we'll use Homebrew. Type brew install MySQL and press enter. Once Homebrew finishes installing MySQL, we'll need to do a couple of things. You'll notice by default it sets up a root user with no password. Next, what we'll want to do is copy the first command and paste it in, and this is going to launch MySQL at startup. Next, we're going to copy the second command, which will start MySQL right now. And press enter. Finally, we're going to lock down our MySQL installation and make it a little bit more secure. To do this, type MySQL _secure _installation and press enter. First thing it's going to do is ask us to enter our current root password. Since we don't have one, we're just going to press enter. Next, it's going to ask us if we'd like to set a root password. Press Y for yes and press enter. Next, enter a new root password for MySQL. Re-enter the same password. Next, it's going to go through and remove some default users, privileges, and databases to make our MySQL installation more secure. To do this, simply press enter through the remaining prompts. Now that we have a secure MySQL installation, let's install Postgres. Clear the terminal and type brew install Postgresql and press enter. Once Postgres is finished installing, we're going to want to do the same thing. Have it launch at startup and then start it right now. So let's copy the first command, paste it in and press enter. And then we'll copy the second command and we'll paste it in and press enter. Now that we have Postgres installed, let's go ahead and create a sample Rails application. First, let's create a new directory within our home folder. Next, cd into our new code directory, and we'll clear the terminal. And let's go ahead and resize things so that we can view our web browser as well. Okay, back in the web browser, we're going to go ahead, in the terminal rather, we're going to go ahead and create two different Rails applications. The first one is going to use the default SQLite database. So to do that, type Rails new MySQL ITE app for MySQLite app and press enter. This will take just a minute for Bundler to download and install the gems. but once it does it the first time, you'll notice that when we create the second application, it'll run a lot faster because all those gems are already installed locally and can be reused for new Rails projects. Now that bundler is finished, let's go ahead and cd into that directory. And let's clear out the terminal. And we can go ahead and we'll create a new split. We'll cd back into our code directory. And we'll type Rails S to start the WebRig server. Press enter. And now if we go back to our web browser and we navigate to localhost 3000 and press enter, you'll see the Rails welcome aboard page. So we've got a Rails project successfully created, up and running on the SQLite database. To prove this, let's go ahead and scaffold out a post. Go back to our terminal and we'll type Rails G scaffold post title string body text and press enter. Next, we'll need to run rake db migrate to run our migrations. And finally, if we go back to the web browser and refresh, and if we navigate to /posts and press enter, we'll get a list page. We can click new post, go ahead and create a sample post. And click create post. And you'll notice that our post was successfully created. We can click back and now it'll show up in our list. So that's Rails with SQLite. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for MySQL. Next, we'll go back to our terminal and we'll go ahead and press Control-C to stop the Rails server. We're going to clear the terminal and cd back to our code directory. Go to our terminal on the top and go ahead and cd back to our code directory as well. And let's go ahead and clear the terminal. And now we want to create a new Rails application using MySQL. So type Rails new MySQL app space -d to specify the database provider space MySQL, which is going to be the database we're using, and then press enter. You'll notice this time that bundler finishes a lot faster than it did for the previous one. Now we can go ahead and cd into that directory. So cd MySQL app, go to our bottom terminal, cd into our new app as well, and type Rails S to run the Rails server. Now if we go back to our web browser and go back to localhost 3000, you'll notice that we get an error, access denied for user root at localhost. This is because we're now using MySQL instead of SQLite, and we secured our MySQL installation by setting a password. To fix this, we'll need to go back to our Rails application and set up the database configuration and add our password. Open Sublime Text, go to File, Open. We'll go to our home folder, navigate to that code folder, and then open up the MySQL app. Under the config directory, click on the database.yaml. Under default, you'll see that our adapter is MySQL2 and our username is root, but we didn't set our password. Enter the password you specified for your MySQL installation here. Save the file, go back to the web browser, and refresh. You'll notice that we still get the same error. The reason for this is because we need to stop the web server and restart it. So go back to our terminal, press Control-C to stop the server, and then type Rails S to restart it. Now if we go back to the web browser and refresh our page, you'll see that now we're getting a new error. Unknown database MySQL app _ development. This means that Rails has successfully connected to MySQL but is unable to find the database for our application. To fix this, go back to the terminal and type rake db :create and press enter. Now go back to the web browser and refresh the page. Your Rails application is now set up and configured with MySQL. To show this, let's go ahead and scaffold out that post table using MySQL this time. Go back to our terminal and type Rails G scaffold post title string body text and press enter. Next, we'll need to run our migrations in order to add our new tables to the database. To do this, type rake db:migrate and press enter. Now, if we go back to our web browser and navigate to /post, you'll see that we get our empty listing page. We can click on New Post. And then click on Create Post. And you'll see post was successfully created. We can click back to go back to our list, and now we see our post there. And that's all there is to setting up macOS 10 for full stack web development.